The candle between us was still burning when I realized my entire life was about to change, and I hadn't even ordered an appetizer yet. I'm Daniel Reyes, 34 years old, a man who had convinced himself that love was a closed chapter. Divorced, guarded, and tired of being set up by well-meaning friends, I almost canceled that evening 3 times. But something, maybe loneliness, maybe fate, made me put on my blue suit, walk into that glass-walled restaurant downtown, and wait at a candle-lit table for a woman named Alina. If you believe in second chances, in love that arrives when you least expect it, and in stories that remind us what humanity really looks like, hit that like button, drop a comment below, share this with someone who needs it, and subscribe to Humanity Tailies before we continue. Trust me, you don't want to miss where this goes. When Alina walked in, she was breathtaking, dark hair swept into a loose bun, a red dress that caught the last light of evening through the tall windows, her eyes carrying both warmth and a kind of exhaustion I recognized instantly, the exhaustion of someone who has been strong for too long. But she wasn't alone. Beside her, clutching a worn teddy bear like it was the only steady thing in her world, was a little girl, maybe 5 years old, in a soft pink dress, her ponytail bouncing as she peeked up at me with cautious curiosity. My stomach dropped. Nobody had mentioned a child. This was supposed to be a simple blind date, coffee shop small talk disguised as dinner, an evening I could walk away from without consequence if the chemistry wasn't there. Instead, I was staring at a woman apologizing with her eyes before she even sat down, and a child who was clearly bracing herself for another stranger who might disappear the way strangers often do. "I'm sorry," Alina said quietly as she pulled out the girl's chair between us, her voice low enough that only I could hear. "My sitter canceled an hour ago. I almost called this whole thing off, but I didn't want to let you down. This is Sophia. She's shy at first." I wanted to say something smooth, something reassuring. Instead, I just nodded, feeling the weight of the menu in my hands like a shield. Sophia hugged her bear tighter and studied me the way children study things they haven't decided to trust yet, carefully, silently, missing nothing. The dinner started stiff. Alina tried to fill the silence with nervous small talk about her job as a nurse, about the traffic getting downtown, about how she hoped I didn't mind the change of plans. I gave polite, distracted answers, my mind spinning through 100 exits. This wasn't what I signed up for. I had built my life around simplicity since my divorce, no complications, no one else's baggage, no risk of loving someone and losing them again. A child changed the math entirely. A child meant permanence, meant stakes, meant a heart I could break that wasn't just Alina's. But then Sophia dropped her fork. It clattered against the plate, loud in the quiet restaurant, and her face crumpled instantly, not from pain but from embarrassment, the kind small children feel when they think they've done something wrong in front of grown-ups. Alina reached for her, murmuring comfort, but before she could, I bent down, picked up the fork, and instead of just handing it back, I made a small joke about how forks in this restaurant were clearly troublemakers and probably needed a timeout. It was a silly, throwaway line. But Sophia laughed, a real, surprised, 3-second giggle that seemed to catch even her by surprise. Something shifted at that table. Alina's shoulders dropped an inch. Sophia's grip on her teddy bear loosened just slightly, and I felt something I hadn't expected to feel that night, the tiniest flicker of wanting to stay. As dinner went on, Sophia began asking me questions the way only children can, blunt, unfiltered, devastatingly honest. She asked if I had a dog. She asked if I liked bears. She asked quietly, looking down at her plate, if I was going to disappear like the last man her mommy brought home. The table went silent. Alina's face flushed with a mixture of embarrassment and old pain, and I understood in that moment that this wasn't just a dinner. It was a test neither of them had planned, but one that mattered more than any resume or first date checklist ever could. I could have laughed it off. I could have kept things light and safe. Instead, I looked at Sophia and told her the truth. I didn't know what would happen because I had just met her, but I wasn't the kind of person who made promises to little girls that I didn't intend to keep. It wasn't a grand declaration. It wasn't a movie moment. It was just honesty, offered plainly to a child who deserved it more than any adult at that table. Alina didn't say anything, but her eyes glistened, and she reached over and squeezed my hand briefly under the table, a gesture so small it might have gone unnoticed, and yet it felt like the first real connection of the entire evening. Over the following weeks, what started as an accidental introduction slowly became something neither of us tried to rush. I learned that Alina had been raising Sophia alone for 2 years, ever since her husband left when complications from Sophia's early birth became too much for him to handle. I learned that Alina worked double shifts at the hospital, came home exhausted, and still found the energy to read bedtime stories in funny voices because Sophia refused to sleep without them. I learned that the teddy bear Sophia carried everywhere had been a gift from her father before he left, and that she held on to it not out of comfort, but out of hope that somewhere, someone who loved her wouldn't just walk away. That knowledge terrified me, because I understood with painful clarity that if I stepped further into their lives and then stepped back out, I wouldn't just be breaking things off with Alina. I would be teaching a 5-year-old girl that men leave, that love has an expiration date, that teddy bears are safer than people. So I made a choice. Not a reckless one, not a rushed one, but a deliberate one. I started showing up, not with grand gestures, but with small, consistent things. Tuesday grocery runs when Alina worked late, teaching Sophia how to ride a bike in the park with training wheels that squeaked louder than her laughter, sitting through cartoons I didn't understand because she wanted someone beside her on the couch. I learned that love, real love, isn't about the fireworks of a first date. It's about the unglamorous, repeated proof that you're still there the next morning and the morning after that. There were hard nights too. Nights when Alina, scarred from being left before, pulled away out of fear rather than lack of feeling. Nights when Sophia tested me, pushing boundaries the way children do when they're quietly asking, "Will you still love me if I'm difficult?" I won't pretend it was easy. There were arguments, doubts, moments I questioned whether I was ready for this kind of responsibility. But every time I considered stepping back, I remembered the fork clattering on the plate, the giggle that followed, and the quiet question of a little girl who just wanted to know if I would stay. 8 months after that awkward, unplanned dinner, Sophia asked me, completely unprompted, while we built a blanket fort in the living room, if she could call me something other than my name. She didn't ask for Dad. She asked shyly if Daddy Dan would be okay, just as a nickname, nothing official, nothing that would scare anyone away. I had to leave the room for a moment to compose myself, because I realized that this child, who once eyed me like a threat, now saw me as someone worth trusting with the biggest word she had, Alina, and I didn't rush toward marriage or grand declarations. We built something slower and, I think, stronger, a family shaped not by a perfect plan, but by showing up again and again until showing up became who we were. What began as a blind date I almost canceled became the most important commitment of my life, not because a woman in a red dress walked into a restaurant, but because a little girl clutching a worn teddy bear decided, cautiously and bravely, to give a stranger a chance. If this story touched something in you, if it reminded you that second chances often arrive in the most unexpected shapes, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs a little hope today, and subscribe to Humanity Tales so you never miss a story like this one. And before we go, I want to ask you something. Somewhere out there tonight, a child might be watching an adult in their life and quietly wondering the same thing Sophia once wondered about me. Will you stay? So here's my special request. Comment below with the word "stay" if you believe that showing up, again and again, is the truest form of love there is. Your voice might be exactly what someone else needs to see today.